Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're watching from. So, this is a great week for Zambia. This week is a great week. When positive news is flowing like that, you feel great. It makes you feel good about yourself, it makes you feel good about the surrounding and everything else. You get that positive vibes, the positive energy. This is exactly what you need. And like when we saw the way they disrespected the president, that was an energy drainer and it was not good at all. But having said that again, as though that was not enough, we saw the way people disrespected Mr. Given Luinda, and that was a very sad thing to see. I think is wrong what we continue saying, and this is a trend we hope will not continue as we get to the 2026 elections in Zambia. So this week we saw the president was in Harare, the president was in Zimbabwe. He went to chair the bilateral Zambia-Zimbabwe meeting, as he called it, the Zimzam. He went to strengthen bilateral cooperation and trade, and so the president, I think it was his first visit, he went to Zimbabwe. It was nice to see the way the brotherhood was going, the way he was received and the connection. And I think we need such kind of trade amongst ourselves. And so we've got Li Qiang, the Chinese premier. This man is the second important person in the Chinese government after Xi Jinping. So the Li Qiang made a 2-day visit to Lusaka before heading to Johannesburg for the first G20 summit ever hosted in Africa. So this trip for Mr. Li Qiang was his first ever trip to Africa as a premier and Chinese first premium level visit to Zambia in nearly 30 years. So I think from China, the first stop he did was, I think he went to Russia, where he had the Shanghai Russia summit over there, and then he made his first stop ever in Zambia. And I don't think the Chinese premier has ever traveled to Africa before. You can imagine how much of an experience this must have been for him, and you could see the man couldn't wait and couldn't resist to look at the zebras on the other side, and that was really good. It was nice to see. So this was the China's first premier level visit to Zambia in nearly 30 years. So it just shows you how important this particular meeting was. Zambia was basically chosen because of the TAZARA projects. Now when you hear of the word TAZARA, a lot of you people will agree with me that what comes to mind is Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. So TAZARA is the historic line China built in the 1970s during the liberation struggle, linking Zambia to the port of Dar es Salaam. So today, China wants to modernize it, expand it, and use it to secure long-term access to copper, cobalt, and critical minerals. And Zambia wants to use it to open trade routes, reduce transport costs, and strengthen regional logistics. And we've seen the reason why the premier is in Zambia was basically because of this very project, which is the TAZARA project. Now, the TAZARA project, a lot of people will agree with me that it definitely needs revamping, and most of its facilities are really dated. Now, I'm not going to say much, but I remember more than 30 years ago when I took a trip myself from the Copper Belt. I was traveling from the Copper Belt to Lusaka, and I got on a train, and oh boy, that experience was really bad. The services at the time were not good at all. I'm talking about more than 30 years ago. So the question a lot of people might be asking is, why did the premium pass through Zambia before even going to the G20 summit in South Africa? So obviously the reason why he passed through Zambia was to drop $1.4 billion. That's what he did. Well, guys, I'm just passing through. The reason why he passed through Zambia was to confirm a $1.4 billion commitment to overhaul and expand the TAZARA railway. So this upgrade includes the new tracks. It's going to include the modern signaling, repaired bridges, improved stations, and better cargo handling hubs. So the main aim for President Hakainde Hichilema is to revamp this particular project, the TAZARA, and make it an artery for business and make it something that's going to benefit the people of Zambia when it comes to trade, when it comes to business. And it's about time that such kind of projects started benefiting the local people, the very common man, rather than just trade that we see at a national level. So sometimes it's a good thing when you see such kind of projects that actually benefit and translate into success for the common man. So the president's intention is to integrate TAZARA with Zambian railways and create a fully functional logistics chain and strengthen the Kaperi-Mposhi dry port as a major regional hub. So for China, this modernized corridor ensures smoother access to minerals, because this is what it is about. And for Zambia, this opens up new export opportunities and reduces pressure on highways that are collapsing, undermining traffic. So of the day, this is what we have to look at. There's always a lot of mention on the Tanzania-Zambia railway, but with very little mention on the Zambia railway itself, because at the end of the day, there's no point of saying and revamping all these train routes that are going to be carrying cobalt, mining products, copper and everything. We are seeing people are seeing all these fast moving trains and everything, and then when it comes to passenger trains, when it comes to something that will benefit the local people, we won't be seeing that much. Then what's the point? I think what we really need to start saying is that when the president or when the leaders are negotiating all these things like the TAZARA, we really need to be seeing a certain component, a direct component that will actually benefit the Zambia railway itself. Hakainde Hichilema himself, the president, speaking, we saw each time he mentioned the word TAZARA, there was another word being thrown in called Lobito. So Lobito is basically a rival rail line that is manned by the US, which is the United States of America, and the EU, whereas TAZARA is for the Chinese. So in very simple terms, TAZARA routes to the Indian Ocean and Lobito routes to the Atlantic Ocean. But the truth of the matter is that they both want Zambian minerals, whether our minerals go through the Indian Ocean through the TAZARA or whether they go through the Atlantic Ocean through Lobito. The bottom line is they want to see our minerals go quicker and efficiently from Zambia all the way out of the country. Now, the only question is, are these minerals going to go out of the country unprocessed? Or are these minerals going to be processed first of all in Zambia before they get shipped out? So I think all those are things that leaders, before even putting all this railway, before coming up with all these things, these are things that leaders really have to think through and make sure that, yes, indeed, if this is the aim of just shipping all these things away from the source to all the way straight to the Indian Ocean, to the Atlantic Ocean, to the Western countries, then I think we've missed the point. I think the point has to be to negotiate whether there's a possibility of actually extracting all these minerals, processing them, or at least some amount of processing needs to be done, and at least before shipping some of these things abroad, because otherwise now the government will end up losing a lot of more money, and this is nothing. The 1.4 billion or the 6 billion that the Americans are investing through Lobito is completely nothing compared to how much money that they will realize based on the Zambian minerals. So now that we've got Lobito on the other hand, and then we've got TAZARA on the other hand, where does that leave our president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema? Now, we really do appreciate, and we know this is going to be the biggest ever investment in the railway system since the 1970s. So this is such a big deal for Mr. President Hakainde Hichilema, and I think he's done so well. We have to give it to Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, because when it comes to business negotiations, when it comes to really negotiating things for Zambia, really tries so well, and he always makes sure that Zambia is well represented in the international community. But however, when it comes to translating that success, and this is what I said again in the other video, there's always that lag between good representation overseas or with international partners and translating that success down on the soil. I think there's a bit of a disconnect there, and I know these things take time. There's no denying that, and particularly when you're talking of construction of a railway, it's not something that's going to be done in a year or 2 or 3 years. These are long-term projects, and it takes a lot of time for all those efforts to be translated into real success or what people can see as benefit on the ground. And if you put in corruption in it and people start misusing some of these benefits, then it becomes a problem, because sometimes people come up with all these nice projects and it's nice on paper, it's good, it looks good, and it tells you these are the forecasts, what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. We're going to have such kind of development, and the monies will probably even be flowing. But again, the problem is when there's corruption or there's public misuse of funds, other few individuals will probably get rich out of this, and the rest they won't bother much with the project. I mean, if you look at Tanzania today, some of the trains that you find in Tanzania, you will not believe it, because they've got fast moving trains, and this is what it is. So they've got the TAZARA, obviously, which is going to be carrying minerals and all of that. But if you look at the railway system, it's as good as the railway system in the Western countries. And this is what we need in Zambia. We need need something like that in Zambia. So if Mr. Hakainde Hichilema can pull it off and have such railway systems as the ones we have in Tanzania, then this will form his legacy, and a lot of people will appreciate what the president will do. Now, we have a lot of faith. Personally, I have a lot of faith in the president, and I know, given his negotiation abilities and his capabilities to paint himself in a positive light in the international front, I believe if he does the right things in the right way and with the right support, there's nothing that he can fail to do. So it's something that he needs to push on, and he's already doing that, and it's a good thing to see. Probably needs a lot more support from the people, from the local people, from the ground. That would be great to see how he manages most of these projects. So President Hichilema is using this moment to push Zambia into becoming a regional transportation hub connected to both oceans. So we are looking at Zambia being connected to the Atlantic Ocean as well as the Indian Ocean. So the Atlantic, like I said, through Lobito, and the Indian Ocean through TAZARA. His strategy is to welcome investment from all sides. So we're looking at China, the United States, the EU, and the private players, while insisting that Zambia must benefit through jobs, value addition, and stronger infrastructure. So handled well, Zambia could become the bridge between Africa's two coasts, something no previous government has fully achieved. So this could be such a big thing. It could turn out to be the best thing that Zambia has ever done. And we might start seeing results on the ground, because I think people are tired of seeing all these deals being signed. Oh, Zambia signed this deal, they've signed this bilateral deal, they've done that, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to now translating that same success, they want to see how much now has this turned into making my bag of meal slightly cheaper. That's the question. Do we have electricity? That's the question. Do we have power? Do we still have blackouts? That's the question. Do I have my agricultural inputs and all these kind of things? Do I have food on the table? I think sometimes what people really want to see is to see whether these things translate to something for them to have a direct benefit to the people. Because there's no need of saying, oh, we've signed this bilateral deal. Oh, no, we've signed this kind of billion, 1.4, 3 billion, 4 billion, and all this kind of things. So another question that people might be asking is that what was Trump Jr. doing in Zambia? So he landed a few days before the premier landed. So, you know, there's always going to be this thing of saying, did he know that the premier was going to Zambia? And because if we really look at it, you know, some people might link him to the Lobito Railway, and because they probably, did he have the intelligence that the premier was going to come to Zambia and initiate and start this project and drop the $1.4 billion? And what was it? So, you know, but anyway, what we know is that Mr. Donald Trump Jr. came to Zambia on a private visit. Nothing to do with the railways, nothing to do with whatever it is, no business involved or anything like that. And that's what we've been told, and that was about it. So this is very common practice. We've seen it within a lot of heads of states or presidents. They could send somebody that is close to them, somebody that is very dear to them, on a very private visit and meet the head of state of the country. No business, nothing to do with any kind of business or anything like that, but just to visit and just to have that soft diplomacy does go a long way. So what does this all mean? So you've got Lobito on the other hand that is investing somewhere between 4 to 6 billion United States dollars. You've got TAZARA on the other hand again that is investing $1.4 billion. If you look at the combined total of all of this, you're looking about somewhere close to $10 billion, which is about half of the total debt that Zambia currently owes. So right now we've got Zambia that is sitting at the biggest competition in terms of mineral extraction. So the real question for Zambia now is, will these railways become new extraction routes for others, or new engines of prosperity for Zambia itself? Because it would be nice to see Zambia for once benefiting from the railway system, benefiting from the minerals that are being extracted, the copper, the cobalt, the coal. Like Mr. Dangote recently said, we need this coal to stay in Zambia for electricity. Now, if we're not very careful, we could start seeing this coal being shipped out of Zambian process to go and benefit other people, and other people will start having electricity before Zambia does. And that would be a very big shame for Zambia. So Zambia needs to really rethink its strategies and really start using its own resources for its own people to develop the agenda of its own people. And I think this is what Zambia needs to do.